Well, first and foremost, thank you for coming here and meet with us today. Former MLA Roly Russell for Similkameen Boundary. We have a few questions to ask to kind of get to know you better. First one would be, what originally get you to go to that position?
Well, thanks for the welcome and thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's always good to chat. So, good question. I think I had been asked by people over the years prior whether I was interested in running for provincial politics or federal politics, and my answer was always pretty definitively no. And then we had a really significant flood in 2018 in my hometown and in Grand Forks and the area around that. And after that, I realized I spent a lot of time working with provincial government trying to figure out, okay, how do we build back better? Essentially, how do we support this community and the region through recovery post-disaster? And there wasn't much legislation. There wasn't much of a framework to support that for community. There wasn't much of a plan in terms of what does recovery look like, and that was fascinating to me. And so really, that was
really to help people right away. That was your first motivation.
Yeah, what was it? Realize the system's kind of broken, right? We had some very good tools, but we missed a bunch of it in terms of how do we actually support community and people through disaster recovery. And then realizing, well, if I'm working in that space and I want to try to help people more, then provincial politics is an opportunity to do that. And disaster recovery or forest management or mental health and addiction. So it was that opportunity to be able to say, okay, well, I can help change things instead of just being frustrated or complaining about it. I'll put my hand up to do that. So it was an enormous privilege to get to do that for 4 years.
What was one of the great moments you had as an MLA during those 4 years?
That's a tough question. Yeah, well, there's
the greatest.
There's great moments, but there's also, there's the satisfaction. Again, I love the opportunity to try to help fix things, and so there's tiny examples of that meant a lot to me, and there's some big ones too, right? And so, to build on that previous answer, we rewrote the entirety of how the province deals with disasters and emergencies. And that's amazing, right? So we took we had a very archaic suite of legislative kind of regulatory tools. We repealed all that and rebuilt it. And getting that across the finish line and getting everybody in the House to agree and moving forward with that was a big deal, right? So that's and that's what from the outside people think like, oh, there's the work that you're doing, right? Is a legislator making new laws about how we do something, which is true in part, but the reality of it is much more of the kind of rewarding work is around helping change the system to look differently for people. And I think partly what people don't see so much is, for example, within a party, within the political system, part of the value is helping move our parties one way or the other into what is a better place for our communities. And so the work probably more significantly for me around changing how the province engages with rural communities across the province is really, really significant and meaningful to me to be able to recognize, talking to the premier and having him give us the green light to say, okay, we're going to rebuild a system of kind of recognition for rural communities and making sure that what we're doing in Victoria works for rural communities. Because it's we feel ignored and neglected, and that's not a party thing. That is historically always the case, right? We're outside of the Lower Mainland and the island, and those places drive politics in BC. So having the premier say, we agree to build a rural lens on decision making in Victoria, enormously impactful, right? And significant for rural people. So that work is probably more of a big moment for me, or big moments maybe for me, even though it's harder to put a finger on. What exactly is that, right? It's a big thing, right?
Yeah. There's any unfinished project that you started during your term that you wish will continue, or you wish you would have the time to finish it before?
Yeah. There's a lot. That list is very, very long. and that's, like, it's obviously kind of, like, losing an election is sad. But, personally, I'm very free now. I've got time to be with my family and read the news and really dig into things. And so that's super, selfishly, life is much simpler for me. And I'm happy there personally. On kind of a broader community and society level, I'm pretty disappointed because there was a bunch of those pieces that were in motion that I was really excited to be able to deliver, right? So, like, whether that's new housing on the grounds of the South Okanagan Hospital for healthcare professionals, whether that is the details of how does the province actually deliver that commitment to rural communities, or the work around natural resource economies and building out a better framework for attracting investment into BC for clean mining or sustainable forestry, and huge opportunities there. But all those things, all of a sudden I jump off the train, and some of them will continue on their way and get delivered by other people. We'll pick up the torch on those, and some of them probably will not. And so that's hard. That's the hard part about losing an election, is not having the job. It's not being able to finish a bunch of those things that were in motion. And there's, you name it, there's a lot of those.
And during the time you were on your mandate, there's obviously COVID happened.
Yeah.
And it's quite of a challenge for many people in politics. Either you had the choice to do something, or you didn't have the choice to do something. But you're the person who we're looking at to either say thank you or blame. Either way. So what you came across during that time that was hard for you in your position, which decision was there that's really hard for you?
COVID was hard for everybody, right? And so, just acknowledging that up front, I think, is important, right? And you actually look back to what our lives were like 4 years ago, and it's pretty remarkable, right? When you think about, like, I was talking to my kids about that the other day, right? And just even the notion of being kind of stuck in our homes, and this is wild, right? In hindsight to think about. And but to be fair to you, like, I knew we were in COVID when I put my hand up for the job, right? And so I walked into that eyes wide open. But again, that's part of what drew me into the work, is I like trying to figure out how to make things better for people, and how do we navigate those complex kind of situations. And so there was lots that was difficult in there, but I'm really proud of some of those things, like managing, for example, to keep the schools open, which lots of people don't, we hear lots of complaints about what didn't go right from different people's perspectives, but something like that, like keeping the schools open, it's not about keeping the schools open. It was about making sure that a bunch of those kids in our communities that need the schools to be their safe place had that safe place still during a time of pretty remarkable crisis. And so other jurisdictions that, maybe erred on the side of saying, well, we'll do school remotely, but we're going to leave our businesses open.
And also you had to manage with the politics side of thing and the recommendation from the specialists.
Yeah, I get my background is in science, right? And so I understand how science works, at least to some degree. Mm-hmm. And I also appreciate that science it's not a values system, right? It's to say, how do we understand the situation we're in, and science is there to say, you take this path, this is likely to happen. And if you take this path, this is likely to happen. It doesn't say which path you need to take. And so politics is there to be able to say, that's the values piece, to be able to say, okay, well, we see this, and we look to the experts to say, this is the likely outcomes. And it's a good example where it's like, well, if we can keep our schools open, kids are going to be healthier and happier and better supported, and that's important, right? And so we deal with all the pressure about, like you say, like, oh, we don't, lots of distrust out there in the world right now for anybody that is an expert in anything, right? Which, maybe that's fair. I think it's a problem, but for me, as and again, that's partly why I agreed to put my hand up for the party I did to run with, is because I appreciate that they're looking to experts to help make those decisions, like health experts and doctors, as opposed to looking to politicians to set direction on those things. So looking to, for example, public health experts to be able to say, how should we navigate a public health emergency? And then filtering it through politics to be able to say, here's how the values that we care about as a society overlay with that, and here's where we think we should go. And it's interesting, like even, people challenge me, for example, like the anti-vaccine and, advocates, for example, challenge me about things, but they don't, especially just prior to the election, but they never asked what I was doing. They always ask, they tell me what I'm doing wrong, but really what they're telling me is what they think the party has done wrong. And almost none of those people came to me and said, well, here's my concern. How are you helping deal with that, right? And that looks like going to the minister and saying, like, tell me, here's what I'm hearing from.
Too.
Yeah, a little bit. I think it's it is our politics broadly, and look at what's going on in the States and the election there too, right? To me, it's all a bit of an indication that the partisanship has taken over from the policy and politics, right? So like I was elected to be the representative and advocate for our communities, for Karamias, for Princeton, for Grand Forks, Osoyoos, whatever. I took that job very seriously, and that's what I was doing. But people that's not what happened. Like in the election, it wasn't an election about policy and people. It was, the voters very clearly voted in favor of party instead of policy or people on the ground, right? And that's not unique to here, right? It's the same in the States, right? Like the election to support Donald Trump, it's not about his policy positions as much as how he's connecting with people, and people feel like he's articulating something they care about in a way which is in large part, I would say, a distrust of government and politicians, which is fair, but it's also ironic because he is a consummate politician, right? He knows how to play that game well. And so there's this transition, I think, from, which is, I think, unfortunate for our communities, from elections being about the policy that we're trying to move forward. Like what does society, what do our communities want? What does society want in terms of direction and values and policy to deliver that and make things better, versus just distrust and hating the other side. And it's not a Republican, Democrat, NDP, conservative kind of thing. It's just always there, it feels like, and it's getting a lot worse.
Yeah. One big question now. Now that you have time, are you going to prepare for the next election? Is it a goodbye or just a temporary goodbye? What are your plans for that in the future?
You're right. It's a big question. I've had, some of the
maybe in different level of politic involvement.
Yeah, I think that the opportunity, after I lost the election, I realized, I went back and I realized it's been since 1994, so it's been 30 years since I have had kind of the freedom. I have been unemployed and had time to really assess, like, where do I want to go next in a very open way, where I haven't either had a job that consumes all my time or some major projects. And so I really am happy to have time right now to be able to kind of step back and say, where do I want to put my energy, right? I really love the work of provincial government as MLA and helping try to build solutions. But there's a bunch of other ways to be able to do the same, right? And to help communities. And so I have the fortune, I guess, now of being able to have some time and having, being comfortable enough to be able to take that time and assess where to go next and how best to do that. So I won't say no to
Roly Russell is up for hire.
No, I've got half a dozen job offers that have been very intriguing, and I've said to all of them, I've said no, I'm not interested in anything for a few months. So I'm forcing myself to take a break. Yeah. So not yet, at least. Come back to me next year, maybe. But again, so maybe that involves coming back into politics in when the next election happens, and maybe not. And I also think we underestimate the burden and the cost of being an MLA on individual people's lives, right? Like there's this conversation about and I heard a lot of this very personal stuff about like, oh, you're in it for the money and stuff. And there's no way, right? Like the only scenario where I can see that somebody would be in it for the money.
I haven't paid you to come here today.
Yeah.
And you probably do that.
Yeah.
And you had to do that a lot without.
Just like being removed from your family. And it's not me. I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about all of our MLAs across the province, right? It takes an enormous toll on people. And it means, people that were your friends before you got into politics, all of a sudden start looking at you, with anger because of some provincial policy that they don't maybe even know whether you supported or you disagreed with, right? But there's all of those costs. The only people that are going to be in it for the money are the people that are doing a really bad job of the work. And so there's that scenario where just being free of a lot of the burdens of trying to carry everybody's it's hard. Like Sunday morning you wake up and you look at your email and you read about somebody that's really struggling with some issue with provincial government services, very firmly in the bailiwick of a MLA, but it can derail the whole rest of your Sunday with your family because you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I solve this problem for this woman from Princeton, right, or whatever it might be. And so it'll be interesting. I'm kind of curious where I go next, and I think part of it is this. It's got to have something to do with helping address, society. I think we're kind of we're removing, like I said, like partisanship is starting to run our politics instead of people driving our political kind of environment, and that's really dangerous, right? I mean, it's risky to me, and I feel like something in that space is probably where I will end up. Is I care deeply about climate action. I care deeply about taking care of people. There's a lot of opportunity in that to be able to help support people, right? Mm-hmm. And we didn't even talk about AI. I'm fascinated by it. I think 4 years from now, AI is going to have an enormous, enormous finger on the scale of politics, and I don't think governments are prepared for that, right?
That's pretty much it for a question today. But to conclude, do you have anything you would like to say to people that vote for you, or people from the area where you were MLA? Is there something you would like to tell them?
I mean, whenever I'm giving speeches, I like to start with some gratitude, and it's a nice frame, right? And a lot of people put a lot of work into the campaign and the 4 years before that as well, and so a huge amount of thanks to all of those people, whether that's on a personal level, like my wife and kids, and what the costs they incurred to help support me to do the work, or on the kind of operational side of things in terms of all the people behind the scenes. And
it's a big team.
It's a big team, and that's really important, right? And I feel like we got a lot done, and so I'm very thankful. I mean, there's no way that it would be doable as an individual, and so very, very thankful to everybody for that. But I think it's the other kind of we touched on a little bit earlier, but it's curious to me. It was because I was running against a candidate that, I sat down and had a beer with her, but other than that, I have no idea really what she stood for, right? I understand what her party was saying, but I didn't understand where she was coming to the work. Like, why was she passionate about doing the work? And that's disheartening for me to lose an election to somebody that didn't show up to debates and so on, right? So she seems like the limited exposure that I had with her, she seems nice, right? She's happy to sit and talk with her, but it's disheartening for the structure of the system somehow that the partisanship carries our local elections in that way, and so I look forward to kind of seeing her. I wish her well, certainly, and hope as well that she it's a big job. I know that well now for sure, and so I look forward to seeing. I think in order to be a good rural MLA, particularly, you need to be loud, and you need to be build good relationships, and you need to be effective, and that's not easy. And so I look forward to seeing how that goes for her, and again, wish her well. We need a strong voice for our communities because we get neglected and forgotten pretty easily. So I hope she is. Wish her well in that process, and hope it goes well for her, and she figures out how to land and make her opinions pretty clear as quickly as possible. So.
Well, we appreciate your time today, and I'm sure it's not a forever goodbye. It's just a temporary goodbye. We wish you everything well in your new project, a future project, and good time with your family to enjoy some peace and great time in family.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Certainly, it feels like if anything, this the outcome of this election just kind of fuels my fire to continue to work on the challenges that we're all facing, right? People are hurting, and that's it's hard for everybody, and so trying to figure out how to help address that and build stronger community. This just kind of helps energize me even more. So I like that. So thank you for the time.
Thank you.